Sup, you beautiful bastards. Hope you've had a fantastic Wednesday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today is the news and seemingly meaningful updates around the Donald Trump, Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen situation. So we've talked about this story several times in the past. It initially started as this weird tabloidy gossip piece that I didn't want to touch, but as more and more information comes out, the more it seems sketchy, the more it seems like there is something meaningful here. And to bring you up to speed, there are news reports alleging that Stormy Daniels had sex with Donald Trump at a country club in 2006 while he was married to Melania. And along with that, we saw reports that said Donald Trump paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 to keep quiet. Now, in response to this, the White House denies it. Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's lawyer, releases a letter that appears to be signed by Stormy Daniels. That letter denies it, but soon after, In Touch magazine says they have an unpublished interview with Stormy Daniels. They publish it. The interview goes into incredible detail. It was then reported by the Wall Street Journal that Michael Cohen actually created a shell company to pay Stormy Daniels' lawyer. To that, you might remember Cohen responded, "Your obsessive drive to prove a false narrative, one that has been rebuked by all parties, must come to an end." Following that, on January 30th, another letter is released. It appears to be signed once again by Stormy Daniels, although many people questioned how real it was because the signature on this letter appeared different than the one from the first letter. The discrepancy between the signatures on the letters is also brought up during a Jimmy Kimmel Live interview that is very weird.
Did you sign this letter that was released today?
I don't know, did I?
Wait a minute, that you can say,
But that does
right?
not look like my signature, does it?
Do you know where it came from? Do you have any idea?
I do not know where.
You do not know where it came from.
And all of that brings us to the big news from the past 24 hours, where Michael Cohen has now openly admitted he paid $130,000 to Stormy Daniels, real name Stephanie Clifford. Cohen saying in a statement, "I am Mr. Trump's longtime special counsel, and I have proudly served in that role for more than a decade. In a private transaction in 2016, I used my own personal funds to facilitate a payment of $130,000 to Miss Stephanie Clifford. Neither the Trump organization nor the Trump campaign was a party to the transaction with Miss Clifford, and neither reimbursed me for the payment, either directly or indirectly. The payment to Miss Clifford was lawful and was not a campaign contribution or a campaign expenditure by anyone." And Cohen also said he gave a similar statement to the Federal Election Commission after they received a complaint from the government watchdog group Common Cause. They alleged that the money paid to Daniels was an unreported in-kind contribution and expenditure by President Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. And on that note, in Cohen's statement, he says, "The complaint alleges that I somehow violated campaign finance laws by facilitating an excess in-kind contribution. The allegations in the complaint are factually unsupported and without legal merit, and my counsel has submitted a response to the FEC." Adding, "Just because something isn't true doesn't mean that it can't cause you harm or damage. I will always protect Mr. Trump." And then he would not answer any follow-up questions. Now, the reason this is big news is it appears that everyone has just been lying and misleading the public. By Cohen's own admission, the reporting seems to have been real. $130,000 was paid to Stormy Daniels, which you could say that doesn't prove that it was in exchange for an NDA, but why? Why? For what other reason would Donald Trump's legal counsel pay a porn star $130,000 out of his own money? And so what appears Cohen has tried now to do is no longer to deny that money was paid that was essentially hush money. He's now moved to the argument of the money that was paid was definitely not illegal. Also, sometimes people pay other people hush money for things that didn't actually happen. Also, a point that's really important here is Common Cause says Cohen's response doesn't dismiss the complaint, saying, "As Trump's personal attorney, Cohen was an agent of then-candidate Trump. The timing and circumstances of the $130,000 payment to Daniels make it appear that the hush money was paid to Daniels in an effort to influence the election." Adding, "At the very least, this latest admission by Cohen and the circumstances behind it requires a full investigation by the FEC and the Department of Justice, as we requested last month." And I have to say, personally, I agree with that statement. Cohen can talk about not being reimbursed, but he stayed employed to Donald Trump. He continued to be paid, so the money could be seen as still connected. It's kind of like how Donald Trump always says Mexico is going to pay for the wall. The argument that he's moved to isn't that they're going to just actually pay for the building, but based off of business deals, the already existing flow of money, we can tweak levers so that the money makes sense. That's how Mexico pays for the wall. And so obviously the money could be made up elsewhere, which also creates an argument for seeing Donald Trump's finances. I'd really like to see if Michael Cohen's billable hours went up after this $130,000 payout, just from his heart to a porn star for no specific reason. And to me, it's surprising that in the midst of the Porter cover-up controversy, we're now seeing this. It's hard to call it anything else other than a cover-up. But with all of that said, I do want to pass the question off to you. What is your takeaway from this story? I'd love to know your thoughts, so let me know in those comments down below. And we actually have a last-second update to this story. I was about to be finished. According to the Associated Press, a manager for the adult film actress told the Associated Press on Wednesday that Daniels believes Trump's lawyer invalidated a non-disclosure agreement by publicly discussing the payment. Gina Rodriguez says the actress, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford, will discuss her alleged 2006 extramarital affair with Trump. Well, this is gonna get interesting. But from there, I want to share some stuff I love today. And today in Awesome brought to you by Postmates. Postmates, of course, fantastic delivery on demand app. You want something something from a store, a restaurant, boom, open the app. They will deliver it to your house, your work, your wherever. Maybe you're hosting or at a party, you need to get more drinks, but you want to be safe, open the app. And best of all, if you are a new customer, go to postofranco.com, download the app, make sure you enter in offer code PHILLY. And if you do, Postmates will give you $100 in free delivery credit. It's just that simple, so try it out. And the first bit of awesome is just a reminder, if you are a subscriber to DeFrancoElite.com, one, thank you, and then two, we're doing a live stream Q&A today, of course, after show, so just make sure you have your notifications on, but it is at the regular time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'll see you there. Then we got the honest trailer for Dragon Ball FighterZ. We had the Black Panther cast answering the web's most searched questions. Life Noggin asking, how uneducated is our planet? We also got an awesome video from Draw with Jazza. He has a series called Draw YouTubers as Heroes and Villains. He just put out a round 3 that includes myself, Boogie, Ethan, and Hila from H3H3. It's very cool, and if you like that sort of stuff, I recommend you check it out. And if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. Then in international news, let's talk about Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. And the reason for that is yesterday Israeli police said that there is enough evidence to bring charges against Netanyahu for corruption. According to a statement released by police, there is sufficient evidence against the Prime Minister on suspicions for the offense of accepting bribes, fraud, and breach of trust. And this statement is huge because it comes after a 14-month investigation into 2 separate corruption cases involving the Prime Minister. And these investigations are known as Case 1000 and Case 2000. Case 1000 centers on Netanyahu allegedly accepting $280,000 in gifts between 2007 and 2016. Those from Hollywood producer and Israeli billionaire Arnon Milchan and Australian businessman James Packer. The gifts included items such as champagne, cigars, jewelry, clothing. According to police, in return for these gifts, Netanyahu provided Milchan with political and financial favors. Favors, they say, included Netanyahu pushing for a law that would give tax breaks to Israelis returning to Israel after spending time abroad. This would have been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for Milchan. Netanyahu helping Milchan become a shareholder in one of Israel's top television stations when Netanyahu was communications minister. Netanyahu intervening to prevent the collapse of another Israeli TV station that Milchan had shares in. Netanyahu assisting Milchan to get a new 10-year US visa. Netanyahu pushing through a business deal involving Milchan and Indian billionaire Ratan Tata, even though the Israeli Defense Ministry opposed it. And while Netanyahu has not denied that he received the gifts, he said that they were just merely gifts between friends. And as far as the other investigation, Case 2000, that involves Netanyahu striking a deal in 2009 with a man named Arnon Moses. He's the publisher of one of Israel's largest newspapers, and according to police, Netanyahu would receive positive press coverage in his paper, and then in exchange, he would help promote the paper and try to stop the growth of a rival paper, specifically one that was distributed for free and owned by billionaire casino magnate Sheldon Adelson. There are even secret recordings of conversations between Netanyahu and Moses that were released in January of last year. This by Israel's Channel 2, in which Netanyahu discusses passing legislation that would prevent Adelson's newspaper from being freely distributed. Last week, we also saw the head of Israeli police insinuating in an interview that Netanyahu had hired private investigators to tail the police. This because they've been conducting the corruption investigation. And following all of this news, in reaction to the recommendation, Netanyahu made a 10-minute televised statement yesterday. He denied the accusation, saying that he would continue being prime minister, saying, "Since I was elected prime minister, there was hardly a single day in which I was not subjected to slander and false claims. Over these years, there have been no less than 15 investigations against me with the goal of bringing me down. They all began with explosive headlines, live broadcasts from the studios, and some of them even with noisy police recommendations to indict, just like today. All these attempts ended with nothing because I know the truth. I tell you, these too will end with nothing." Which then brings us to the question of what happens next, and also potentially an answer to why. Why does Netanyahu seem so sure that this will end with nothing? Well, now that the police have made their recommendation, the investigation goes to Israel's Attorney General's office. The Attorney General, the state prosecutors, they'll look over the evidence from the police investigations and they'll decide whether to indict Netanyahu. And so what we're looking at is a situation where even if it does happen, that could take months. And there's also been criticism and people wondering if everything's actually going to be above the board because Israel's Attorney General, he was Netanyahu's former cabinet secretary and also was his favored choice to become Attorney General. So obviously there's a connection there, a relationship there, many wondering if this person can be objective. And it will be interesting to see what happens because Israel is in a very interesting place right now. If Netanyahu is indicted, he is convicted, he could face prison time. At the very least, this does create a public perception problem for Netanyahu, even if he is not indicted. Israel's other political parties have enough seats in Israel's parliament to call for new elections before the scheduled election, so they could potentially take advantage of the situation as it is right now. And also, let's say Netanyahu was removed. This would be a massive change to the region. I mean, we're talking about Netanyahu. He's been in a position of power since the 1990s. There are a lot of question marks. How would this change Israeli-Palestine peace talks? Netanyahu has had a very hardline stance. How would this affect the extremely controversial Israeli settlement situation? And what this affects for the region is far-reaching, so that's why this is going to be one of those situations that it will be important to watch. This is a potential game changer, and so as we find out more as the situation develops, I'll keep you in the loop. Then I want to talk about some really interesting and controversial news coming out of the Netherlands. And the reason for that is the Netherlands has now officially passed a new law that automatically signs everyone up to be an organ donor. And they're also not alone in this move. They're following Following the footsteps of countries like Spain, France, Belgium, they have similar programs. Now that said, while the program does exist somewhere else, it is still highly debated, both with your everyday people and in the government. In fact, the upper house of representatives only passed this by a vote of 75 to 74. It then had to go to a lower house because it needed some amendments before it passed, but even there, it narrowly passed in a vote of 38 to 36. And so what this law passing means is that in 2020, the active donor registration changes the organ donation system from opt-in to opt-out. The US, most of the world, you have to opt in. You have to say, yes, I'm fine. If I die, you can take my organs. But in the Netherlands, that will no longer be the case. They say people 18 and over who aren't registered already will receive a letter asking them if they want to be a donor. They have the options of yes, no, my next of kin will decide, the designated person will decide. If the person doesn't respond to that one, they will get a second letter 6 weeks later, and if again there is no response, they will automatically be signed up to donate their organs. You can still opt out of the program, you just have to take the steps yourself to do it. In response to this change, the Dutch Kidney Foundation's called the vote a real breakthrough for patients on waiting lists. Their founder, Tom Oostrom, adding hundreds of patients will get back their lives and freedoms. But I mention this story not to say whether it is right or wrong, but because I'm fascinated to know what you think about this. I'm still trying to digest the situation as someone whose father was saved by a transplant. I kind of love the idea of there being more organ donations, although my father got a kidney from someone that was alive, so that there's not a perfect connect there. I think that as long as the Netherlands does a good job of educating the public of this change, which it should be plastered everywhere, I think it could be a great move that saves lives. But then I also start wondering, well, what do they do if they have a hard time identifying someone? Like, what happens if you die but you don't have your wallet on you? But like I said, still trying to digest it, and that's why I would love to know your thoughts on this. Then let's talk about the potentially devastating news for YouTube, Facebook, and the creators on their platform. In the past, we've talked about various iterations of the YouTube adpocalypse. Something happens on the platform, a lot of advertisers freak out, they pull their advertising for the time being. And right now, Google, YouTube, Facebook, hell, any social media platform that has had any controversy whatsoever is looking at the bad end of a gun held by Unilever. And if you don't know, Unilever is one of the biggest consumer goods companies in the world. They own brands like Dove, Lipton, Axe, Ben & Jerry's. Even more important, they had an annual global advertising budget of $9.5 billion last year. And 25% of their ads were digital. They were the second biggest global advertiser in the world in 2017. And the reason we're talking about them this week is their chief marketing officer, Keith Weed, said that they are prepared to remove their advertising. This threat made in response to the allegations that these online platforms are still not doing enough to police extremist and toxic content. Now keep in mind, in his speech, he does not specifically name Facebook and Google, but it's what he's talking about. Saying fake news, racism, sexism, terrorist spreading messages of hate, toxic content directed at children, parts of the internet we have ended up with is a million miles from where we thought it would take us. As one of the largest advertisers in the world, we cannot have an environment where our consumers don't trust what they see online. It is critical our brands remain not only in a safe environment, but a suitable one. Unilever will not invest in platforms or environments that do not protect our children or which create division in society and promote anger or hate. Consumers care about fraudulent practice, fake news, and Russians influencing the US election. They don't care about good value for advertisers, but they do care when they see their brands being placed next to ads funding terror or exploiting children. Weed also saying that he has already begun discussions with Facebook, Google, Twitter, Amazon, and Snapchat about policing their content better. Now in response to this, Facebook said they support Weed's comments. Google saying Weed's always pushed us to be better. This is something we take serious. And also when I looked at YouTube, I think it's these kind of threats that are the reason why YouTube is finally policing people like a Logan Paul. It's not just that the actions of a very, very large creator on the platform hurts all the little guys. It hurts YouTube itself. Right, with a website as big as YouTube, you can say, you know, there's so much content, the bad content's at the side. When it's one of your staples that is at the center of a controversy, it becomes a different conversation. And this actually ties into a story people have been wanting me to chime in on, and that was specifically the CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki. She had an interview. You may have already seen one of the headlines. CEO of YouTube defends Logan Paul. Not a great description of the situation. YouTube CEO says Logan Paul doesn't deserve to be kicked off the platform. That, I personally believe, describes the situation better. And there was a lot of outrage around this report because a lot of people saw this as YouTube defending Logan Paul. If you actually go through the full interview, which I did, what she's saying does make sense. YouTube is currently punishing Logan Paul by removing him from Google Preferred, removing his ads in general. And Susan points out it is incredibly important for them as a company to look at something and go, okay, that's distasteful, that's maybe not advertiser friendly, but did it break guidelines or enough guidelines, the 3-strike policy that we have as creators on YouTube, to remove that person from the site? And on that note, they are saying they are trying to kind of police that gray area, you know, where something may be distasteful, off-putting, but doesn't necessarily qualify for a strike. So with Logan Paul, you know, the suicide exploitation scandal, strike, some of the other things that people have gotten angry about, not so much. But that's where the removal of ads, removing people from recommended, that's where that could go into play.
The thing is, we need to codify what we see as distasteful in our policies, and then we need to have that be very clear so that we're not just saying, oh, look, this is distasteful and kicking it off of the platform. And then I think the other thing we need to do is consult also with experts too. So we're starting to do a lot more of understanding, sort of where do we draw these lines.
My personal mindset, as I've said from the beginning, has not been that Logan Paul should be removed from the website, but for YouTube to change their system, which as of right now, still, even if you remove the advertisements, still incentivizes people to do outrageous, outlandish things. And they've taken those steps, at least partially. We've seen them actually suspend advertising. They've also threatened to remove people from recommended, but with Logan Paul, we haven't seen them actually implement that. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. I've talked to several people who probably wouldn't want to be named from YouTube, and there are varying opinions about Logan Paul and his treatment thus far. But that said, all of it brings us back to the Unilever situation, which will be very interesting to watch. Out of all the adpocalypse situations, we've actually never seen Unilever back out. That said, you still have brands like AT&T who have pulled their advertising, still not coming back to play with YouTube. But that said, we'll have to wait and see. That's where I'm going to end today's show. And remember, if you like this video, you like what I'm trying to do on this channel, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you got that little bell checked. YouTube's been taking their damn time getting the videos to some of your subscription boxes, so a notification always helps. That said, if you did miss yesterday's Philip DeFranco show, you want to catch up, click or tap right there to watch that. Or you need something lighter, you can watch today's brand new behind the scenes vlog. Click or tap right there to watch that. But that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.